Jury selection in the murder trial of Lori Vallow started today at the Ada County Courthouse. She's the Rexburg mom charged with murder and conspiracy to commit murder in the deaths of her two children, JJ and Tylee, and her husband's late wife, Tammy Daybell. We have team coverage today. News Channel 7's Shira Matsuzawa and Morgan Romero were inside the courthouse as jury selection played out through the day. They join us live now from outside the courthouse. Let's start with Shira with the latest on jury selection. Shira?
Well, Doug, since we last saw you on the news at noon, a different pool of jurors made their way into the courtroom, but they were asked the same question. Questions like, will they be able to make the certain time commitment allotted for this case? And in this case, that's up to 8 weeks. Now, some jurors, many of them were excused because they simply couldn't make that time commitment, citing work or medical obligations. But take a look now. These are sketches from inside the courtroom. Lori Vallow appeared in court wearing a black cardigan with a bluish-greenish shirt inside. But the goal of today's jury selection is essentially to find a person who has heard nothing of this case or maybe has some knowledge of it but can still remain fair and impartial. In fact, one of the questions asked today was if any of the potential jurors have heard of Lori Vallow or know her or are related to her. And in a case like this, where there has been extensive media coverage and Netflix documentaries as well as podcasts, that can be a difficult process. But today's hearing, or during today's proceedings, there were actually a handful of people who said they had no idea who Lori Vallow is. As we reported last week, 1,800 potential jurors were summoned, and they were given questionnaires to dwindle down that number. Today's jury selection is closed to the public, but we were able to watch from a remote hearing room, also being referred to as an overflow room. In that room, there was a projector screen displaying 3 angles. There are a camera on the judge, one on the defense with Lori Vallow and her attorney, and then a third camera pointed at the prosecution. Now, they're looking for 18 jurors total, 12 jurors and 6 alternates. They brought in a pool of 15 potential jurors. One failed to show. The second poll also had 15 people. And we are expecting one more group of potential jurors. But as we mentioned, this case, they summoned 1,800 people. And I spoke with Dave Leroy, a criminal defense attorney, as well as former Idaho Attorney General. And he says that is a historically large number for a pool of jurors here, or a potential pool of jurors here in Idaho. And let's get right over to Morgan Romero, who is also here at the courthouse. And Morgan, I know you've been tracking jury selection since before it began today. Give us some background.
Shira, you touched on so much of what has been brought up throughout this entire case, right? Is the publicity around it. And what they're trying to do is get to a fair and impartial jury. We don't know of those 1,800 that filled out the questionnaires how many jurors were showing up today or throughout the week. But we do know that, as Shira mentioned, they were interviewed in panels. Judges and attorneys I talked to both said they owe it to not only the prosecution, but also the defense to have a fair trial. During voir dire, which is what it's called, jury selection today, they asked about pretrial publicity in the media and how and if that would impact any of their considerations on the elements of the case and if they could be those impartial jurors. That media attention and the length of the case, as Shira mentioned, is why they're having 18 jurors, 6 are alternates, 12 are those permanent jurors. Ada County Administrative Judge Stephen Hippler told me last week they'd rather start out with a lot of people than not enough. 6 is more than normal, but if somebody sees the wrong newscast or hears the wrong radio station, it can of course pose a problem. They don't want anything to influence jurors. They're asking people to give up 8 to 10 weeks of their lives, which is a long time to be away from people's families, from their jobs during the day. They also know this case will take a toll on people's mental health, seeing and hearing the evidence and the arguments. The judge does not want to have to sequester the jury, meaning taking them away from the rest of society. Hippler said he believes people in Ada County really take their oath to be a juror seriously. Former Ada County Chief Deputy Prosecutor Gene Fisher told me the judge will instruct jurors multiple times regarding their duty to stay off social media, not consume any media around the case, and not talk about it. I asked whether she thinks it's going to be difficult to find that fair and impartial jury I mentioned.
I do think it's going to be difficult. I mean, Ada County certainly provides a much larger jury pool, and that's why they're here, so that's great. I think that picking a jury requires a certain amount of sophistication mixed with intuition, and in the end, your gut. That's really what happens. I mean, there's sophistication in the beginning of this by being organized, knowing what your themes are, looking for the juror that's going to be fair and impartial. and watching and cueing for not only what they're answering to, but body language and how they're participating on the other side, what they're answering for the defense. What does their body language look like then? It's a lot of sophistication, but in the end, it's really intuition and gut. And that's why the defense attorney and their client get to also picture, it goes back and forth.
Between the defense and the prosecution, they have to get the pool down to 42 jurors, which could happen at any point. This is according to a spokesperson for the prosecution who was in that overflow room today. She says they're already halfway there, so they've got 17 of them so far. Once they get down to 42, the process gets more nitty-gritty. The attorneys are able to ask more targeted questions. And of course, once they get to those 18, that will be the official jury panel. Although this trial is being held here at the Ada County Courthouse, this is still Fremont County's case. So Judge Steve Boyce still overseeing this case from Eastern Idaho. He brought in his own team, the prosecution and the defense also from Eastern Idaho. All that said, though, this is certainly impacting Ada County facilities and Ada County staff. I'm going to talk more about that coming up in the 4:30 half hour. Doug?
Yeah, certainly a lot of preparation going into this high profile of a case with national interest. Morgan, we'll see you at 4:30.